Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Sheldon Goldberg. I am the adjutant of JWV Post 692, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all this year to our 8th annual Memorial Day program held here at the Bender JCC. And on 8 beautiful days, I think we only went in once during Veterans Day. The weather turned bad, but we've been blessed, I guess, all this time. To begin with, then, I would like to introduce Rabbi Michael Malkus to give us an invocation.
Dear God, as we gather today to honor those who have sacrificed their lives to defend our country, to defend democracy and freedom, and to safeguard the ideals and values that are the bedrock of the United States, we pray that we'll be inspired by their bravery and courage to commit ourselves to these values in our everyday lives, and to remember them for their service to our great nation. May their example be a shining beacon for us. May their commitment to America and to Judaism remain alive in our minds at all time. Almighty God, grant us strength to realize your vision of peace and harmony among nations. Let us all say, Amen.
Those of you who can stand, please do, as we welcome Ms. Cassie Sandetz to sing the national anthem that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, say, can you see the dawn's early light? What so proudly we at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the that our flag was still there. Oh, say does our spangled banner o'er the land and
Now, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the Republic for which it stands, one occasion under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Please be seated. Now, my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Michael Glick, Commander of Post 692. Michael.
Well, thanks to all of you who came out to this beautiful and yet solemn day before Memorial Day to remember service members who are no longer with us. And I would especially like to thank Colonel Cohen, Rabbi Malkus, JCC CEO Josh Bender for joining us to commemorate this day. And I'd also like to thank JWV Post members Joel Poznansky and Lieutenant Colonel Goldberg for organizing this remarkable event. As some of you may know, Memorial Day has roots dating back to the end of the Civil War, which claimed more lives in any conflict in U.S. history, requiring the establishment of the country's first national cemeteries. By the late 1860s, Americans throughout the country started holding springtime tributes to fallen service members in many towns and cities, decorating their graves with flowers, and reciting prayers. On May 20th, 1868, more than 5,000 participants of the first ever National Decoration Day, that's what it was originally called, decorated the graves of the 20,000 soldiers buried at Arlington National Cemetery across from Washington, D.C. 100 years after the first National Decoration Day, Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act in 1968, which established Memorial Day as the last Monday in May in order to create a 3-day weekend for federal employees. The change went into effect in 1971, and the same law also declared Memorial Day a federal holiday. While this holiday is designated as a national holiday to remember, mourn, and celebrate the lives of men and women who valiantly served in the U.S. Armed Forces that are tragically no longer with us, over time, this holiday was known as the unofficial start of summer, becoming synonymous with barbecues, pool parties, and can't-miss sales. I want to thank all of you for coming here today to recognize the true purpose of Memorial Day, to remember those service members who have left us, especially those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. So at this time, I would like for all of us to take a moment of silence to reflect on those brave souls. Thank you.
I'd like to bring Mr. Josh Bender, the CEO of the Bender Jewish Community Center, to the mic to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you, Sheldon. Good afternoon. I'm Josh Bender, the CEO of the Bender JC of Greater Washington. I'm grateful for all of you for coming out today for this Memorial Day program. Just a couple weeks ago, I was attending the Yom HaZikaron, the Israel's Memorial Day program hosted by the Israeli Embassy. And it was a particularly poignant occasion, both to reflect on the sacrifices that Israelis have made to the country in the past, in all of its wars, the loss of lives, but also the current situation, the loss of life that so many are going through right now with the war in Israel and Gaza. And so as we gather today for Memorial Day, and I think about the power of this moment in our community, I think about both occasions over the last couple of weeks, and I'm reminded of the importance of coming together with our community to mark these sacred occasions like today. And these opportunities give us a chance not only to give our gratitude and our respect to those who paid the ultimate price, but at the same time, it's a reminder of the lives that we live, the impact they had on our lives and what brought us to where we are today, and the great responsibility we have for the future. So I actually want to take this moment just to thank our Jewish War Veterans Post 692 for gathering us every year at this beautiful memorial here at the Bender JCC and raising up these moments for our community so that we can come together in our community to mark these occasions. So thank you again for being here. It's really important to the Bender JCC that we do everything we can to honor the memory of all that served in our military, but at the same time to honor all veterans. And we're here to do that as a community. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all that we do together as a community to mark these sacred occasions.
Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I want to take just a minute or two on this Memorial Day weekend to remember a personal friend of mine and of many of yours as well. Colonel Erwin Allen Burtnick, United States Army retired, who passed away on the 25th of November last year. Colonel Burtnick spent 37 and a half years in the United States Army in both active and reserve duty. Among the many sides to him, a proud Jewish veteran, a devoted partner and husband, a tireless worker, he was a commissioner on the Maryland Veterans Commission and the longest serving member in the country on the Committee for the Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve. He was our department commander, we used to say, for life, something like 20 years, if not more, and a founding member of the Jewish Uniformed Service Association of Maryland. Erwin's long experience on the Maryland Veterans Commission gave him the unique understanding and insight into veterans' benefits, and he was never happier than when he was able to give someone's disability benefits increase. As he was our voice on the Maryland Veterans Commission and kept our department posts up to date on changes in veterans' benefits and laws, as well as JWV's representative to the Maryland Military Coalition. Lastly, he was an outspoken advocate for the modernization of the Jewish war veterans. And despite opposition from many of the older higher-ups in the JWV that prevented him from becoming the national commander, he did accomplish many things, particularly in the last few years, that is making JWV a better organization to which to be a member. Erwin was my friend and my mentor, and I miss him. But most of all, we all will miss the giving, selfless, and dedicated man that enriched our lives, our organization, and our community. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you our guest speaker, Colonel Frank Hahn. Is someone known to many of you already. Colonel Frank Hahn, a U.S. Army retired, was born in Breslau, Germany. And when Hitler came and the Nazis came to power, the national economic boycott they instituted forced his father to eventually sell his business and seek lesser employment. Frank also became harassed and chased by schoolmates until his parents placed him in a private Jewish school. In 1938, Colonel Hahn's father left on a trip to the U.S. seeking affidavits from family to get his family in Germany out of Germany. Shortly after he left, the Gestapo came looking for him. Scaring his mother, she wrote his father not to return to Germany. She then arranged to obtain tourist visas to travel to the United States with Frank, which they successfully did. In 1943, just after his 18th birthday, Frank was drafted into the U.S. Army, eventually winding up in Europe sometime after the invasion. When the Army discovered he spoke German, he was given intelligence training and served in the Battle of the Bulge as an interrogator of prisoners of war. Returning to the U.S. after the war, he remained in the Army, obtained an undergraduate degree, a master's degree, and served in Korea and later Vietnam. All in all, he served 37 and a half years in the Army, retiring in 1978 as a colonel after completing his assignment as Chief of Staff for the Military District of Washington. Colonel Hahn was married to his late wife, Pauline, for 72 happy years. They have one daughter, Laura. He is currently a volunteer at the Holocaust Museum. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Frank Hahn.
Don't mind if I sit down, I hope. Thank you. Fellow Jewish war veterans and guests, I'm honored to be here. And I think my talk could be entitled "A Jewish Refugee in the United States Army." As you heard in the bio, I escaped from Nazi Germany in 1938 at age 13. And we came across with a visitor's visa, and we stayed until I was 18, and I was 18 in August, and then drafted in September. It didn't take long in those days. And as you probably know, if you get into the Army, you go to a reception center, and I was Fort Dix, New Jersey. And there, you're supposed to be there about 4 days. And the first day, you get orientated, you get your uniform and whatever. And then on the second day, you end up on KP. They wake you up at about 4 in the morning, and you're in the kitchen until about 8 o'clock at night. And then on the last day, the third day, you see a couple of films, and then you're looking for the orders to go to basic training. Well, everybody went to basic training except me. So I marched over to our sergeant and said, what happened to me? Why didn't I get orders? He said, let me go check. He came back. He said, simple. You're an enemy alien. Enemy alien? I didn't know I was an enemy alien. Nobody had called me that before. And he said, of course you are. You came across on a visitor's visa. You were never naturalized. Your last passport was German, and you were born in Germany. You're an enemy alien. The FBI has to investigate. And I thought to myself, oh my God, KP for the next God knows how long. I went back to the sergeant. I said, Sergeant, I'd like to let you know, I know a little bit about the military. I was an ROTC in high school, and I took one college course in ROTC, and I know close order drill, I know the tactics, and I know history and all that. He said, well, I'm glad you told me that, because I'll make you an acting gadget. An acting gadget? What's an acting gadget? Well, here is an armband that has corporal stripes, and you've got to wear that armband, but don't let it get into your head. You're not a corporal. You don't get paid as a corporal, but you are now a seasoned veteran, 3 days longer than the next recruits that come in. And when they come in, you form them up and you march them to the theater to see the 2 films that you saw. I thought, oh, thank goodness, not KP. Anyway, the 2 films, the first one was a very good propaganda film, Why We Fight. The second one was How to Avoid Venereal Diseases. I saw that movie more time than anybody else in the United States Army. Well, anyway, it took about 3 months for the FBI to finish the investigation, and I got my orders to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and basic training, Fort Benning, Georgia, rather, and basic training in Fort Benning, infantry, of course. And about 3 weeks later, they took me out to Columbus, Georgia, to the Middle District Court, and I was sworn in as a U.S. citizen. Boy, was I proud. I patted myself on the back because there was nobody else around to do that. And I now felt so much better because I was no more an enemy alien. I was now, just like everybody else, a United States citizen. And I'm happy of that to this day. Well, anyway, as chance would have it, thank you. As chance would have it, I was placed into the 87th Infantry Division at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And the division had a bit of a morale problem because the basic training unit that I was in, these were all college graduates. And as we started, we were told we were going to go back to college right after basic training to finish college, which was a bit of a dumb idea because I would have finished college in 1946, the year after the war was over. Well, somebody else thought of that before we graduated, and off we went to infantry because they could recognize they were going to need infantry after the invasion. And there were also people who washed out when they were trying to be flyers. They were in there. So we had a lot of disappointed people in the 87th, and it was to be getting a little bit of a boost. They had a general who was going to come in and tell us how to get raring and going in the United States Army. And we heard that he was going to ask, "How do you feel, men?" And we were practicing in advance to answer rough, tough, and ready for combat. Well, the general came, he asked the question, and weakly in the front, you had rough, tough, and ready for combat, much louder in the back, piss poor and praying. Well, we were restricted for the next couple of weekends. Anyway, that was the 87th Infantry Division. Now, without telling you all about the reason, anyway, I was hurt with a white phosphorus grenade when we were in a gas attack type of training, and I had a gas mask on, thank God. Otherwise, I would have gotten it blasted in my face. The instructor did. He had thought it was a smoke grenade, and it ended up white phosphorus. And he got it in the face, and I ended up with the burns around my ears, my wrists, and the hands, and the backpack caught fire. I was the first in the dispensary. They didn't know what it was until the instructor came and he said, "White phosphorus." And that's when they put my hands in a bucket of water and put compresses of water on my ears, which stopped the burning. And I was in the hospital for 4 months. And while I was in the hospital, they progressed from a full field march of 5 miles all the way up to 25. So when I came back, I was not in condition. And about 15 miles, they had to take me in a Jeep back to headquarters. So I was not their best soldier, which meant that they were assessed to put infantry replacements out to replace the losses in the invasion. I was nominated as one of those infantry replacements. And I left the 87th Division as an infantry replacement, went to England, went to France, and went to Belgium. And in Belgium, we went all the way up to Malmedy, and we had foxholes there. But we also got leave, and we went to Malmedy, and there we met some girls, and they took us. The others, I knew just a little bit of French, and that was good enough so I could translate, so we could pick up those girls. Anyway, the girls took us to their homes, which was very nice, and we saw the pictures, and we saw we were in the house of the enemy. The picture showed their dads were in the German army fighting us. It was a very eerie experience. Well, it was in Belgium when they finally recognized I spoke German. And back I went into Le Vessinais near Paris for a 2-week course in what the Ritchie boys had in 7 weeks. This was Ritchie Boy Light, if you knew about the Ritchie boys. Also, a lot of refugees from Germany who spoke German. And they all, at the graduation, as we did, got US, ripped off our rank. My rank was PFC, and no more PFC. I was US. Nobody knew my rank. And I joined a team of 6, 2 officers, 2 interpreters, and an non-commissioned officer in charge, and a driver. The driver was a technician. He outranked me, but he didn't know that. And I took advantage, and I ordered him around whenever I had to. Anyway, off we went. As soon as I joined the team, we went off to Luxembourg, where we met 12th Army Group T-Force, a large intelligence unit right under General Bradley. And our mission was to follow the infantry into the big cities. And in the big cities, we had building targets and personality targets. Building targets was anything that the government needed to continue their occupation, and anything in support of the prosecution of war criminals. And the personality targets were the war criminals, of course. Now, we got into Belgium in early December, and the 16th December, the Battle of the Bulge. We just made it. Anyway, we were committed in the Battle of the Bulge to find enemy soldiers who had penetrated our lines in American uniforms to a Jeep. And we started to circulate throughout Belgium, Namur, Dinant, Rochefort, Ciney, all kinds of various Belgium cities. And to this day, I remember, and it isn't to remember because of the battle, the remembrance is the weather. The weather was just awful. It was either snowing or sleeting or freezing rain, and we were moving 25 miles per hour in the Jeep throughout all these cities with the windshield down because you can't shoot through the windshield. And that blast was just awful. And I was a PFC, which the officers knew, and I was in the back seat as a PFC, of course. And in front was my captain, and I ducked behind the captain, and he got the worst of that blast as we were moving along. But I never told him that he was helping me. Anyway, whenever anybody says Battle of the Bulge, the only thing that comes to my mind is the weather. And then the other thing that comes to the mind was when the Battle of the Bulge was over, we got to Liège, and we got our first shower, and I stayed in that shower for 20 minutes, and people were yelling, "Get the heck out of there," but I wouldn't move. That was my first bath, goodness how long. And to this day, I appreciate my bath every time I take it. And I just love my bath and always remember the Battle of the Bulge. Anyway, that's how things go. Let me. Okay, I'll tell you about the Bulge. You know what the mission was, and we got to Namur, and there we found that an infantry replacement, an infantry roadblock had wiped out as they didn't know the password apparently, and they recognized this was an infiltrators, and they wiped him out with a bazooka, and we saw the 4 Germans laying across. They were dead, and we searched them, and all we found were dog tags, and we turned those in because these were either POWs or they were killed GIs. And then there were explosives, and they had maps, but that was it. There was no intelligence value to be gained. And we continued in that motion. I might tell you that the first night of the Battle of the Bulge was the scariest in my life. Not because there was shooting at me, but they were shooting all over the place, and there were rumors all over the place that there were German parachuters, and they were ready to get into our headquarters. And I was put out on a access road, and I had a rifle and a flashlight and orders, don't let any Germans get in. Well, how do you solve that problem? So I stood in the middle of the road, and the first vehicle that came, I said, halt, halt. And the guy in there says, what the heck you doing? I said, I'm making sure you're not a German. He said, if I were a German, you'd be dead. Get in the ditch back there. Well, I thought he had a point. I get in the ditch, and the next vehicle comes along. Halt, halt, halt. He doesn't hear me. He goes right past me. I'm not doing my job. Yeah, I'm getting out of my head as to what the heck am I supposed to do. I was up, I was down. I couldn't solve it. And they should have certainly put me with somebody else, but I was alone. Anyway, at midnight, they pulled me in, and we had a blackout move to Namur. We were actually heading for the port city that was there, and we didn't know that the port city was also the target of the Germans. But we didn't get there, and the Germans didn't get there, and we stayed in Namur, and then started our operation throughout Belgium. That was the Battle of the Bulge that I can tell you about.
Got lost. The unit got lost, and your captain went to the. Your unit got lost. It was when you got lost and you got thought you were Germans, and they thought.
Oh, that story. All right, there's a good story too. Things don't always go like they're planned, believe me. We were circulating throughout Belgium, and we could see the captain wasn't sure where we were. He looked at the map, and he looked around, and he looked at the map again, and as chance would have it, we were passing a little hillside where an infantry unit was deployed, and we said, "Captain, let's stop and find out where we are." He didn't want to do it, but finally, reluctantly, he stopped and got out and said, "Cohen, come with me." And we trudge up this little hill, and there the lieutenant had drug a table from the farmhouse, and he had maps. It was so easy. All the captain had to do was say, "Hey, Lieutenant, show us where we are." No, I'm Captain Rebel, military intelligence. Give us a briefing of the situation. Well, the lieutenant looked us up and down. He said, and he wasn't impressed. He said, "You know, you guys, we got word about these crowds four and a jeep infiltrating, and you guys look just like that." Cap said, "Well, of course we're not." He said, "Well, let's find out." He said, "What's the fifth general order?" Well, if he'd asked me, I could have given him all 12 of them. We rehearsed that all of at once. Captain doesn't know. What's the world? Who won the World Series? Captain looked at me. I looked at the captain. I didn't know. He didn't know. Said, "All right, cite the Star Spangled Banner." So he shouts, "Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?" He's not singing. So he got stuck. Well, in the meantime, the other interpreter down there by name of, well, his nickname was Flo. He knew something was wrong, so he came in port arms, jogging up the hill, and he had a terrible German accent and said, "What goes on here?" Well, that's all that was needed. And M1 in my belly, and M1 in the captain's belly, and M1 in Flo's belly, and they ran down and got the driver, and we were now prisoners of war of the Americans. It took 7 hours before they could recognize that we were really legitimate, and we were sitting out there for those 7 hours in the freezing rain, and it was just miserable as could be. And the captain, the lieutenant says to us, "Get the hell out of here." And the captain gets us and said, "I don't want anyone to say one word about this to anyone." "No, sir." We got back to the CP, and they came running out. To, "Hey, what goes on here?" They had heard the whole story, and we couldn't live it down. That was the Battle of the Bulge as well. Well, thank you for finding me. Well, you should be stopping, but let me give you one more quick story. It was the first city that we got into. By the way, we went from Cologne across the Remagen Bridge into Düsseldorf and Siegen, and then Frankfurt, and then Wiesbaden, and then it went supposedly to Kassel. But at Kassel, we were told, go immediately to Magdeburg because the Russians are on the other side, and we had to have a vis-a-vis with the Russians from one side of the Elbe to the other. Elbe was a dividing line by General Eisenhower. We didn't cross, they didn't cross. Anyway, Cologne was the first city. And there were no personality targets in Berlin, in Cologne, because they had all withdrawn across the Rhine River. All the Nazis were gone. So we had plenty of time, and we helped them enforce the curfew. I got my driver and I went around and we saw a figure in the dark and I said, take chase. And he did. And he cornered, there was a young girl against the wall. And I came out and I was with fluent German, scared the heck out of her even more. I was an American speaking fluent German. And I said, what are you doing after curfew? And she said, well, we were hungry. There are three of us. And we haven't eaten for the last 3 days because we had one ration card and we had black market supplements. And when the Americans started to come in, the ration card went out of the window because all the Nazis went across the Rhine to the other side, and the black market dried up as well, and we haven't eaten. And I said, well, what's wrong here? What do you mean you had one ration card for three of you? And she was hesitant, and she said, well, there was this Dutch lady, and she rescued us. What do you mean rescued you? There are two of us, and we're Jewish. I almost dropped out of a Jeep. This is 1943. There were no Jews in Cologne. And I said, get in the Jeep. And we go to the address, 49 Stadtwaldgürtel. I still remember the address. And I wish I remembered the name of the Dutch lady and the names of the girls, except the one girl I caught was Ellen. That's all I recall in the names. Anyway, the Dutch lady said, of course, all this was true. And she had guided them for 2 years in there. And what happened then was she caught cancer. And she was so happy that the Americans came because she didn't know she became incapacitated what would happen to the girls. But now she knew they were going to be saved. And I said, well, don't worry about the food. We'll take care of it for you. I went back to headquarters. I saw Lieutenant Levy in headquarters. I told Lieutenant Levy, oh, these two Jewish girls. He said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of them. And then about 3 days later, I told Flo about the two Jewish girls, and he said he wants to meet them. And I said, yeah, I'd like to see Ellen again because she was really a cute little Jewish girl. So we got back, and there's a big off-limit sign in front of the house. Well, Flo and I looked at each other and we said, let's go back and talk to Lieutenant Levy. What's going on? We got back. I said, Lieutenant, why'd you put an off-limit sign there? He said, I have no idea what you're talking about. He gets in our Jeep, we go back, and we get into the house, we go past the sign, of course, and he sees the Dutch lady, and we're greeted like the great liberators that we were. And the lieutenant says, what's good with that off-limit sign? So the lady sort of chuckles and said, Lieutenant, you did too good a job. What do you mean I did too good a job? He said, well, you sent this truck over with food and I put it in the basement. Pretty soon another truck came with food. I put it in the basement, and then another truck, and then another truck. I didn't know what to do with all the food. My basement is full of food and I couldn't turn it off. So I went around the block and I saw an infantry company commander and I said, Captain, what can I do? He said, I'll take care of it. That's how the off-limit sign came. Well, it's a nice story because when they heard about the poor Jewish girls taken care of and they're hungry, all of these people came and tried to help. I wonder if that's true today. I'm not so sure. But anyway, just to finish the story, I checked on the girls after the war was over. I promised to get back, and I came there in the morning, and nobody home. And I found a neighbor, a lady who knew everything. You know those ladies, and she knew what happened. She said the Dutch lady died, and she left the house to the two girls, and the two girls are at work in Cologne, and they'll be back at 5 o'clock. And I couldn't stay because this was the British zone, and I had no business in the British zone. So I just gave word that Frank was there, Frank the Liberator, and they'll know who it is. And I give him regards, and I wish him the best and my condolences about the Dutch lady. And that's all I know. I know nothing about it. Thank you very much. I understand and you have to excuse me. I have another engagement and I got to run right now. So thank you very much.
I'd like to bring to the microphone now Mr. Jared Blum from the ADL, National Commissioner of ADL.
Well, I don't know about you all, but when I was younger and somebody was teaching me a little bit about public speaking, they said there are two things you should never do when you follow a speaker. One speaker you don't want to follow is a child, and the next speaker is somebody named Colonel Frank Cohn. So I got him, and I hope he's going on to Seth Meyer or Jimmy Kimmel, because we need him on TV. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I guess to say pleasure is probably not the right word, because talking about anti-Semitism anywhere is probably not really a pleasure. But I want to first thank the Jewish war veterans of the United States for the invitation for ADL to speak today. My name is Jared Blum. I serve as the National Commissioner, as a member of the Regional Board of Directors, and also I chair the Law Enforcement Outreach Committee in the region. Before I discuss my prepared comments, I wanted to share with you a personal realization that occurred to me when I was asked to speak today. Many years ago, I read a book right here, written by my uncle in the late days of the 1940s, or in the middle of the war, 1940s, and then subsequent to that. It was a diary. My uncle survived 3 years of warfare in North Africa with Patton's Second Armor. And I think, Frank, he was with you at the Bulge. And he was also at the D-Day battle. This book was more of a combination of a diary and a retrospective on how the war had damaged him. It made it clear that his work later on with the Disabled Veterans of America and his role as a post commander were instrumental in helping him survive what we now know as PTSD. He believed that just as in combat, his comrades, his veteran comrades, now that they were back home, by his side, helped him to navigate this new, very challenging life that he now lived. So I read this book again this weekend, and it brought back deeply personal memories that I had of my uncle when I was a little kid. And so I say again, I am truly honored to be here today, and a very important day. And again, I'm sorry that we have to bring up the issue of anti-Semitism today, but such is the nature of who we are as a people and now as a country. For those unfamiliar with our work, Anti-Defamation League is an anti-hate organization and a leader in calling out and combating hate, anti-Semitism, and extremism. Critical to our work and our mission is monitoring and exposing extremism that threatens our democracy. I am honored to be here today to acknowledge and pay tribute to the sacrifices of so many who serve to protect this democracy. We gather here today to commemorate the incredible men and women who lost their lives while serving our country, and it feels particularly meaningful to be here today and acknowledge this sacrifice during a deeply polarized and challenging time in our community, our country, and indeed the world. In 1979, ADL first tracked and published an annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents. Unfortunately, the results for 2023 are deeply, deeply disturbing. And this started before October 7th. I think it's important to keep in mind, this is not just generated by the Gaza war. 2023 was the worst year for anti-Semitic incidents since ADL began recording more than four decades ago. There were over 8,000 incidents nationwide, an increase of 140% compared to 2022. We saw increases in all categories: assaults, harassment, and just plain old vandalism. Now, here in Maryland, not proud to say this, Maryland registered with the seventh highest incidence of anti-Semitic activities reported in the country for 2023. These numbers are shocking and reflect a national emergency that requires action from every sector of our society. But I want to also emphasize that behind every one of these data points is an individual, a mother, a father, children, grandparents, friends. Each of them are impacted by what may have transpired. Hate, an individual act of hate, goes way beyond the impact of that one individual. It is a community-wide event, and it's why it's so critical that the community respond. Jewish Americans must not give in to fear. Even while we fight the scourge of anti-Semitism, we should be proud. We should be proud, and I know you are, of our Jewish identity and confident in our place in American society. We have more allies than enemies, and it's critical that we band together and stand with our neighbors and friends. And I think it's important to note, not just in Maryland, but in virtually every state, when there has been an upsurge in anti-Semitism, local and national politicians, no matter what political stripe, and you may disagree with the manner in which they support the Jewish community, you may disagree with the language they use, but for me, it is very encouraging to see that no one is sitting on their proverbial hand when this occurs. To counter this rising tide of hate, ADL is engaged in a multi-pronged approach to fight anti-Semitism through advocacy, education, and partnerships. And that is why I am optimistic. I've been doing this for 45 years. Quite frankly, this is the most challenging time of my lifetime, but I am optimistic. At the state level, ADL is calling on governors to launch comprehensive, state-specific strategies to combat anti-Semitism. Federally, ADL is advocating for the passage of the Countering Anti-Semitism Act in our local communities. ADL is focusing on youth education, as well as supporting law enforcement to enhance the prevention and response to anti-Semitic hate crimes and other forms of hate violence. It's one of the things that I particularly feel strongly about, which is why we make sure we partner with local law enforcement. When there is, God forbid, a swastika on the JCC, you want to feel that that Maryland State policeman or Rockville trooper that comes here gets it. They understand how serious it is and how much they need to reassure you that this is not the way things are going to be. On a day like Memorial Day, we reflect on the sacrifice of our fallen service members, all service members, all faiths. Like Jewish Americans of all generations, we will continue to fight for our democracy here at home by countering hate and anti-Semitism. Jewish Americans are not going anywhere. We are staying here. This is our home. I encourage you, as you reflect, to consider what actions you can take in your community to combat anti-Semitism and hate. We are stronger together. Thank you for your time, and in particular, thank you to the families and friends of those we honor here today. Bless you all. Thanks again. Thank you so much. So,
moving right along. I believe now that I'd like to bring to the microphone Mr. Jeff Sklaver for the tribute to his son, Captain Ben Sklaver, who was lost in Afghanistan.
Nephew.
Nephew, sorry.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a real honor to be with you today. I guess it's supposed to go before, but maybe it's going to go after. They're going to give us a list of all fallen soldiers, and those are names. What I'm going to try and do in the short time I'm speaking to you today is try and put a face to one of those names, my nephew, Benjamin Sklaver. We as Jews say that when someone dies, may their memory be a blessing. This means to me that it's our responsibility as Jews to keep alive our loved one's memory and to learn and grow from their life. You did me a great mitzvah today by allowing me to share with you Ben's story. It's been almost 15 years since his death, and memories do fade. Preparing this talk has brought him alive to me again, if only in my memory, and for that, I'm grateful to you. Ben was a captain in the Army who died October 2nd, 2009 in Kandahar province, Afghanistan, when he was ambushed by a suicide bomber. He was 32 years old. Ben was part of the 472nd Civil Affairs Battalion, charged with establishing better relationships with the Pashtun people, so hopefully fewer of them would join Al-Qaeda. He did this by meeting with village elders and listening to their needs and assisting them in rebuilding their traditional tribal structures. It was Ben's second tour of duty. As a commissioned officer, he could have chosen to resign his commission, not gone back, but he felt strongly about the importance of his mission and, more importantly, the men that served under him. His first tour of duty was in northern Uganda, where he helped refugees from its 20-year-old civil war rebuild their destroyed communities. One of the things he saw there was that the wells in a lot of the villages had been poisoned to drive the residents away. Determined to do something to prevent people from needlessly dying of waterborne illnesses, he created a nonprofit when he returned home to Connecticut called Clear Water Initiative to raise money and put teams in place to dig new wells, clean wells, to dig new clean wells in the parts of northern Uganda ravaged by war. His work ultimately helped more than 13,000 people across the region gain access to fresh drinking water. The people of Uganda affectionately called him Moses Ben, and after his death, the high school in the district where he had worked named its cafeteria after him. The head teacher, in his dedication, referred to Ben as a fallen scholar and humanitarian of unprecedented benevolence. So what was Ben's background, and how did he end up enlisting in the Army? Tall and muscular, brilliant and compassionate, Ben was a star swimmer on his high school team in Hamden, Connecticut. He went on to Tufts University, where he was a member of its crew team, and eventually graduated with a master's degree from its prestigious Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. After graduation, he worked for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, where he traveled to Africa to work on international hunger and refugee relief issues. He later worked for FEMA. Then had enlisted in the Army's ROTC program while in graduate school. He did so because he had a calling to serve, as did both his grandfathers in World War II. Ben saw his job in the Army as a combatant for peace and a way to do greater good. Judaism had a big influence on Ben's life. He was motivated by Tikkun Olam. My brother Gary, Ben's father, said that Ben, and I quote, very strongly followed the Jewish teaching that we may not repair the world. And he was prepared to do it one person, that his goal was to repair the world, and he was prepared to do it one person at a time. His sister Annie said, He needed to help like he needed to breathe. I like to share with you two entries from Ben's journal he kept that speak better than I do as to the person he was. The first was written several years before he enlisted during a visit to Geneva, Switzerland. He wrote, "Went to the Red Cross Museum today and got a needed reminder of the faces behind war. Not the numbers we talk about, but the faces. It should be a museum that's mandatory for everyone in Geneva, and it made me wonder, why don't people learn that war kills? Can this be changed? Is war human nature? No. Human nature is desire for security, food, and shelter. So does a solution exist? Help. Seems like the only choice for now. Just go in and help." The second entry is one of the last he wrote and speaks to the horror of war and his Jewish faith. It says, this is going to be a tough one for me. "Currently lying on the floor of a vacant school we've occupied along with the Afghan army in a village north of Hoke. First chance we've had to rest in at least 72 hours. Left Kandahar Friday just after midnight and drove slowly north until around 5 a.m. Then dismounted and patrolled for 10 hours in Kahuk. It was the second time since we've been here that I expected to be attacked on patrol, looking for landmines and IEDs. Said the Shema and Baruch Hu under my breath as we crossed danger areas." I'll leave you with a note found on an index card amongst Ben's belongings from Afghanistan. It read, "To my little sister Annie, a little advice I've picked up over the years from one traveler to another." And in large letters he wrote, "Barns burnt down, now I can see the moon." This is a quote attributable to a 17th century Japanese poet that spoke to Ben's optimism and guiding belief that when something tragic occurs, something good becomes possible. Ben's death was tragic, but in his short 32 years, he led an incredible life and made a difference in the world. Tikkun Olam. May his memory, as well as the memory of all our veterans who died too soon, be a blessing. Thank you.
As we move along, I'm going to ad lib here for a second, but as we move along, a couple of words were said that we're going to experience in just a few minutes. Pride. This is one thing that JWV stands for. And if those of you have not been to the National Museum of American Jewish Military History in Washington, you need to come down and see the Hall of Heroes, because there's where our pride really stands out. This is the room that recognizes all 19 of our Medal of Honor recipients since 1862, when the award was first presented. The other thing is faces, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that in just a little bit. But right now, we're going to start putting names out so that you can really understand what Memorial Day is about. And I'd like to ask the gentleman that I've given the slips to come and read the list of the fallen. Michael, you're first, I believe.
Specialist Daniel J. Agami, Coconut, U.S. Army, 25 years old, Coconut Creek, Florida. Sergeant Howard P. Allen, Arizona, Army National Guard, age 31, Mesa, Arizona. First Lieutenant David R. Bernstein, U.S. Army, age 24, Phoenixville, PA. Corporal Albert Bitten, U.S. Army, age 20, from Chicago, Illinois. Sergeant Aaron C. Bloom, U.S. Marine Corps, 22 years old, Tucson, Arizona. Petty Officer Second Class Michael Brodsky, U.S. Navy, 33 years old, from Tamarack, Florida. Petty Officer Third Class Nathan Bruckenthal, U.S. Coast Guard, age 24, from Smithtown, New York. Tech Sergeant Anthony L. Copra, U.S. Air Force, 31 years old, Indian Head, Maryland. Sergeant First Class Christopher A. Sellis, U.S. Army, age 32, Somerville, South Carolina, Medal of Honor recipient. Corporal Ryan J. Clark, U.S. Army, 19 years old, from Lancaster, California. Corporal Michael R. Cohen, U.S. Marine Corps, 23 years old, Jacobus, Pennsylvania. Second Lieutenant Seth J. Dvorin, U.S. Army, 24 years old, from East Brunswick, New Jersey. Lance Corporal Mark E. Engel, U.S. Marine Corps, 21 years old, Centennial, Colorado. And Corporal Mark A. Evman, U.S. Marine Corps, 21 years old, from Burlington, Vermont.
I'm Charles Miller, Commander, United States Navy, Reserve, retired. Private First Class Aaron E. Fairborn, United States Army, age 20, Aberdeen, Washington. First Lieutenant Daniel Farkas, U.S. Army, age 42, Brooklyn, New York. Sergeant Zachary M. Fisher, United States Army, age 24, Baldwin, Missouri. Specialist Jacob S. Fletcher, United States Army, age 28, Bayshore, New York. Specialist Daniel J. Freeman, U.S. Army, age 20, Cincinnati, Ohio. Specialist Doug Green, United States Army, age 23, Sterling, Virginia. Sergeant Foster L. Harrington, United States Marine Corps, age 31, Fort Worth, Texas. Airman First Class Elizabeth Jacobson, United States Air Force, age 21, Riviera Beach, Florida. Lance Corporal Jeremy M. Kane, United States Marine Corps, age 22, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Petty Officer Second Class Matthew G. Cantor, United States Navy SEAL, age 22, Gillette, New Jersey. First Lieutenant Nathan M. Krisoff, United States Marine Corps, age 25, Reno, Nevada. Staff Sergeant James M. Malaka-Whiskey, United States Marine Corps, age 25, Westminster, Maryland. Private First Class Deborah P. Noonan, U.S. Army, age 26, Watertown, Connecticut. Specialist Levy N. Nuncio, United States Army, age 24, Harrisonburg, Virginia. Corporal Michael Aremus, United States Army, age 21, Highland, New York.
Good afternoon. I'm Colonel Harvey T. Kaplan, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, retired. Staff Sergeant Robert J. Paul, U.S. Army Reserve, age 43, The Dalles, Oregon. Major Mark E. Rosenberg, U.S. Army, age 32, Miami Lakes, Florida. Corporal Dustin H. Schrade, U.S. Marine Corps, age 20, Indian Harbor Beach, Florida. First Lieutenant Roslyn L. Schulte, U.S. Air Force, age 25, St. Louis, Missouri. Captain Joseph W. Schultz, U.S. Army, age 36, Port Angeles, Washington. Captain Robert M. Secher, U.S. Marine Corps, age 33, Germantown, Tennessee. Specialist Mark S. Seiden, U.S. Army, age 26, Brigantine, New Jersey. Airman First Class Matthew R. Seidler, U.S. Air Force, age 24, Westminster, Maryland. Staff Sergeant Michael B. Shackelford, U.S. Army, age 25, Grand Junction, Colorado. Private First Class Stephen Shapiro, U.S. Army, age 29, Hidden Valley Lake, California. Sergeant Alan D. Sherman, U.S. Marine Corps Reserve, age 36, Brick, New Jersey. Chief Warrant Officer 2, Joshua Silverman, U.S. Army, age 35, Fort Riley, Kansas. Chief Warrant Officer 3, Eric A. Smith, U.S. Army, age 41, Rochester, New York. And last but certainly not least, Captain Benjamin A. Sclaver, U.S. Army, age 32, Hamden, Connecticut. Thank you for sharing some thoughts and memories. We appreciate that.
Private First Class Eric Supreme, U.S. Army, age 20, Woodbridge, Connecticut. First Lieutenant Andrew Stern, U.S. Marine Corps, age 24, Germantown, Tennessee. Captain Michael Tolavsky, U.S. Army, age 30, Passaic, New Jersey. Staff Sergeant Peter Taub, U.S. Air Force, age 30, Philadelphia, PA. Private First Class Morris Walker, U.S. Army, age 23, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Specialist Glenn Watkins, Washington State, age 42, Carlsbad, California. Technical Sergeant Timothy Weiner, U.S. Air Force, age 35, Tamarack, Florida. Sergeant Robert Weinger, U.S. Army, age 24, Round Lake Beach, Illinois. Specialist Jeffrey Wershow, Florida Army National Guard, age 22, Gainesville, Florida. Private First Class Colin Wolf, U.S. Marine Corps, age 19, Manassas, Virginia. And for those of you who haven't seen a wonderful ballet that his mother created called Colin, about the fact that Colin was actually, before he joined the military, was in ballet, and it's been performed wonderfully at the JCC. It will be again. Major Stuart Wolfer, U.S. Army, age 36, Coral Springs, Florida. Sergeant Elijah Taiwa Wong, U.S. Army, age 42, Mesa, Arizona. Specialist Benjamin Ben Yehuda, U.S. Army, age 24, Bogart, Georgia. Senior Airman Jonathan Yelner, U.S. Air Force, age 29, Lafayette, California. Lieutenant Miroslav Steve Zilberman, U.S. Navy, age 31, Columbus, Ohio.
I was reminded to inform you that Colonel Khan will be visible tonight on television at the Memorial Day program. He's being presented an award by NPR, PBS, right? So if you're home and you're interested in that, take a look. We apparently are missing our bugler. Oh, he is here. In that case, then, would you please rise? We'll be laying a wreath. you for seated again. And Rabbi Malkus, if you'll come for benediction. And as he walks up here, I would ask you all to stick around because we're going to hear a song that Cassie recently recorded that will give a face to the pictures and to the names that we've been hearing and many others.
If you're able to rise, I ask that you do so at this time. El Malay Rachamim, God full of compassion. Before we depart today, we pray that the inspiration of this hour not quickly fade, but that it remain with us throughout the year ahead. May we carry forth with us the high resolve that the noble sacrifice of our fallen brothers and sisters not be in vain. May we hold firmly the torch which fell from their hands. Help us to build the better world of which they dreamed and fought for. Help us to guard the America for which they died and to preserve their faith and ours. To these purposes, Almighty, we dedicate ourselves today and continuously in the future. Bless us and bless these United States for now and into the future. And let us all say, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Malkus. You may be seated. It's a real pleasure for me now to introduce Miss Kathy Sandaz, Chairman and Executive Officer of Voices of Vets, which I'm a proud board member, who will sing for you. If you
Thank you, Sheldon. So this next song was recorded last year by Voices of Vets. David Rosen, who's a supporter of our organization, came to us and said, "Hey, I wrote a song. Not sure if it's any good, but you can have it and record with it. And, if it's something great, hopefully it turns out." And what the song is about, David Rosen worked at the Washington Post for many years. And at that time, there were pages of our fallen heroes printed on a couple of different pages. And he looked at it one day and he said, "These are more than pictures. This is somebody's father. This is somebody's mother. This is somebody's son, daughter, child." And came up with the song More Than Pictures. We do have a music video coming out. One is out, so you can see actually we put the Vietnam images and More Than Pictures. So if you go online, you can see that, voicesofvets.com. But we also are producing another one with the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. They do a mulch challenge every year to honor a fallen hero. So we have around 200 honorees in our next video coming out tonight. So this is More Than Pictures. I'm into the paper, I'm getting to a page. Pictures filled with name, home, rank, and age. They are fallen soldiers, all still standing tall. Give their lives to answer duty's call. Yes, they all sacrifice brother, somebody's child, sister, daddy for a little while. More than pictures on a page, but behind every face, the story of a way in love, dreams left unchanged. More than pictures, they're the soul of what's keeping freedom's hold. For you and me and the country, bravery untold, more than pictures. Look, you'll see things of liberty. And I touch their pictures, pausing at each one. Said a prayer, give thanks for what they've done. Then my thoughts turn to the families, pride-filled heartache. Their last kiss, their final embrace. Yes, they are somebody's brother, sister, mother, daddy for a little while. With the pictures on the page, and behind every face, it's the story of the way of love, dreams left unchased. The pictures, they're the soul, what's keeping freedom whole. For you and me, and that country, bravery untold, more than pictures. Look, you'll see, face of liberty. And you'll always be here to me. Now I won't forget the day I met the face of liberty. The pictures on the page, and behind every face is the story of a way of love. Dreams of chance. You bravery untold, more than picture. Look, you'll see. Pictures. Face of liberty. You can find our song on YouTube or YouTube and Spotify and on our website, www.voicesofvets.com. So, all right. So I have two more song selections. I know it's hot, so we'll keep going. This next song is called You'll Never Walk Alone. Voices of Vets was founded over 7 years ago. I was encouraged by my government teacher in high school to go sing for the veterans. And at the time I was graduating, going on to college, and I was like, I don't have time. In my mid-20s, I came back and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go to Charlotte Hall, which is the only veteran home in Maryland, and sing for our veterans. And Colonel Holmes, my government teacher who encouraged me to do that, this was his favorite song. It's You'll Never Walk Alone from Carousel. When you walk through a storm, hold your head high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden So our last song, when we go to the Veterans Home, we actually just visited Charlotte Hall Veterans Home last Monday and the DC Vet Home. We're going to go back to Charlotte Hall tomorrow. But when we end a performance, the goal of our organization, we go to every veteran home and we bring live professional music to enhance quality of life. And it's music from their era. So we figure out what the demographic is before we ever go and choose tunes that we think that they might love. But we always end with God Bless America. Thank you so much. And may God bless America. For us to see, let us pledge allegiance to a land that's free. It's all and that I love stand through the night with the lights from the mountains to the ocean. Sweet home.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the program. There are refreshments in the back if you'd like to imbibe. And we hope to see you back here around the 11th of November, Veterans Day, at least the first Sunday closest to Veterans Day, when we'll be having another program such as this and what we've done in the past. Thank you so much for coming out and bringing all this beautiful weather for us. Thank you.